as well as World Society of Information Systems. We will also aiming to submit short policy briefs to be compiled for the UN Major Group publication that will be published in WIDIS. And we count now on your active participation and support in that regard. So let us first start with brief presentation from our panelists here, and we will be starting with Mark William Dadisgald. Mark William Dadisgald is a Brazilian researcher holding a BA and a master's degree in international relations. He's focused on internet governance and the application of technology on public and private policy making. Within ICANN, he is affiliated with the business constituency, supporting Latin American entrepreneurs in their participation within the institution. He is also the founder and coordinator of Upper Internet Governance course, Governance Primer, which currently being carried in 3 different countries. Mark, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Khulud, for introducing me. I feel the weight of all those titles you gave me. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark. What I'm here to do, actually, is to share a bit of how I leverage this youth experience into something that is starting to become a career. Because, you see, the youth programs, the next generation programs, the opportunities into the system that are given to young people around the world, yes, they're very important because they allow us to access the spaces, these international spaces, transnational spaces that transcend our budgets, transcend our experiences, and they are incredible, very good for us. But at the same time, there needs to be a flow. There has to be something in which we receive this knowledge, we work on it, and we find a path somewhere we can invest that in. And more often than not, this path doesn't materialize. So many initiatives stop once you have this experience. And what I did was, after my first ICANN meeting, for those who don't know, ICANN manages names and numbers on the internet. It's a very good program, Next Generation. Khulud is from there. That's where I met her. After that, I came back to my hometown of São Paulo, and I said, you know, I learned so many interesting things, and I want to share them. How do I go about doing that? So there's where I think our role as entrepreneurs comes in, or as idea starters, because there are resources around, they're just not being leveraged. So I began talking to different institutions and getting a feeling for, okay, I need some money for that. Where could that money come from? And I need some people to give a course. Who could those people be? And the answer was my friends from the program who were already there. And with that, I began my Internet Governance course very unpretentiously. Now we have done around 10 editions, 3 countries, moving towards 5 countries. But there was nothing given there. See, it was something that born out of what I wanted to do, and I felt like it could be done. So we need to keep in mind that while these opportunities are given to youth, there's also a need for us to not stay constrained within those opportunities, right? We always have to look forward to how we are going to apply this in a meaningful way that will drive our careers forward, that will drive our positions forward, and those of all of our youth and all of the people who are vulnerable and everyone that we feel don't have a stake in this. So what I always suggest to any youth group that I manage to coach or teach or get in contact with is that the power of having an initiative is very important. That you come with an idea and you attempt to carry it out and you attempt to, okay, I feel that people need education about this. I feel that people need more internet access. I feel that if we go back to our own countries and feel constrained because we don't know how to do it, then it's already a losing battle. And that's not where we want to come from. We have a lot of energy. We are very diverse. We have groups that keep growing, and now there is a youth SIG at ISOC. There are many observatories, many smaller groups, bigger groups, generations of groups, and those are resources. It's not just our friends, those are resources. Also, the institutions that are willing to pay for you to travel to somewhere must be willing to pay for you to invest in something. If they aren't, knock on different doors. Because if we don't keep that mentality, if we don't keep a mentality of how to move things forward and create new spaces, consequently, we will become an eternal cycle of youth, just going through the system again and again and again. And that should not be the emphasis. That is my perception of that. So now I'm kind of leaving my course to another youth and thinking of the next thing, the next step. So in Latin America, not a lot of businesses are included in internet governance or the internet in general. And by now I have amassed some knowledge, not all the knowledge in the world, but some knowledge, and I started investing into that, how to bring those people. And what I heard a lot, much like with my courses, oh, that's impossible, there's no market for that, nobody's interested, that's gonna fail for sure. But turns out it didn't. It's working out pretty well. And that's what you get. A lot of people who are already within the system will try to tell you that what you're trying is impossible just because they didn't do it or they couldn't do it or that wasn't a thing at the time. But a lot of things are possible. It's just that we have to have the courage to just kind of stand up and do it. And yeah, that is tiresome. That is tiresome. The idea that there is still permissionless innovation is not completely true. There are road bumps, there are political aspects to navigate, but at the end of the day, if you have a goal, you should be able to pursue it because there is space for it. You just have to keep in mind that it is a path and you need a plan. So with that, I very briefly want to introduce this line of thoughts and pass the word back to Khulud so that we can get a nice debate going afterwards.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, indeed. And we also now have our friend, which is Michael Ogia from Europe. He's a Belgrade-based independent consultant, researcher, and editor working within the internet governance ecosystem. He has a professional experience in conflict resolution, journalism and media, civil society and academia across 5 countries: United States, Lebanon, India, Turkey, and Serbia. Michael, the floor is yours.
That makes me sound way more important than I really am, I promise. So, for the past year or so, I've been really trying to focus on sustainability as it relates to the internet. Because, for instance, just to give you an idea, global ICT use is currently around, or actually a couple years ago, it was estimated to be around 10% of total electricity use. So the fact is that ICT's sustainability is not built in to the core of the design of ICT, and this has led to many problems and many issues going forward, whether it be from e-waste to how we're generating data to power the internet, etc. This has been something that I just consistently am interested in and will continue to do so. But at the same time, the more I focus on sustainability, the more it makes me think of a certain thing, and that is that 2030, which is the deadline for the SDGs to be met, that is not an arbitrary date. And actually, last year at last year's IGF, I was lucky enough to be in a group with a bunch of young people, and one of my co-collaborators of this particular project is sitting in the back, and we actually created a kind of a 12-step guide to achieving the SDGs, and in that guide, one of the ideas that we had talked about was about the importance of involving youth. Why? Because since 2030 is not arbitrary, it's not arbitrary because ultimately if we don't meet the SDGs, it's not just going to be, I mean, we're ultimately going to be the ones that are suffering from it, from that lack of doing so, we as in youth. We had, at the time we had written that, you know, the fact that meeting the SDGs is our problem. We are the ones that, it is the biggest problem. If, we are the ones that are going to suffer. And so over the past year, one of the ways that, that I've been really trying to focus my sustainability work, but also my capacity building work is a couple, this year specifically, I've been involved in a couple different capacity building projects, specifically in Southeastern Europe, where I'm based. One of them was a youth-led initiative that was with the Cooperation and Development Network of Eastern Europe. And that is a platform that's connected to the Greens of Europe. And we actually organized from the bottom up with thanks to Council of Europe funding and some others, including the Internet Society. We actually funded and created our own digital rights seminar where we focused on cybersecurity and digital rights capacity building. One of the ideas is that we wanted to better engage youth and help give activists and young people the tools to protect themselves online. Another organization I was very happy to be involved with this year was the Balkan School of Internet Governance, which was also youth-led and youth-organized. And that was another something else that we did throughout the Balkans to help and build capacity specifically for internet governance. But the idea is that we need to really encourage youth-led organizing and youth-led programming, because in the end, no one else is really responsible for empowering us. We have to do it ourselves, and the clock is ticking. Climate change is getting worse. And multiple other aspects of the SDGs are not necessarily being met quick enough. And on top of that, there's really, even the goals themselves don't necessarily even tie, it's kind of ironic because, for instance, there's no direct relationship between SDG 9, Target 9, which is about connecting the next billion people. There's no necessarily direct correlation between that and SDG 12, which is about sustainable consumption, and SDG 7, which is about energy. So the fact is that, yes, these are very much youth-related issues. It is on our shoulders to help make sure that the SDGs get realized. And anybody that, and really, I cannot stress enough how the only way that the SDGs are going to be completely implemented is if youth are involved in that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And now the turn to our lady, which is Shanai Chair from Africa. Shanai is a researcher. She's from Research ICT Africa, and she works on projects in South Africa, Zambia, Rwanda, and Guinea, and Kenya, of course. Her area of research includes youth access and use and generated issues of access and internet governance. Shanai, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Khulud. Okay, so just to clarify, I'm from Zimbabwe, but I stay in South Africa. Okay, so one of the things that Research ICT Africa is focused on is understanding what exactly is on the ground. So we look at building evidence necessary to influence ICT policy. And this year we decided to have a youth thematic, which I lead, which tries to understand the experiences of youth from a marginalized perspective. So it's been great listening to my colleagues' interventions, but I think for me, one thing that stands out when it comes to youth is that it's not a homogeneous group. They have different issues when it comes to SDGs, and we've been speaking of youth as if it's one happy population. But so our research has focused, we conducted ICT access and use surveys from an individual perspective in 7 countries. And then we also conducted qualitative focus groups in in Rwanda, Nigeria, and Tanzania. And what we wanted to understand is what were the challenges that young people faced and how are they making use of the internet to address these issues? And what we actually found was that and we focused specifically on the internet, and what we found was that there can only be an effect determined by the context. So what we looked at was that we looked at age groups between 15 and 19 and 20 to 24, and we found that for a large number of the people that we interviewed, poverty was a big issue, and this meant that sometimes there would be school dropouts. This meant that they wouldn't be able to access certain facilities. And this also meant that the internet was not a resource that could be easily accessed. Now, in Africa, well, in the countries that we've looked at, young people are leading internet use when you look at the age group between 15 to 35, despite the low levels of access in these countries. So what we found was that young people make use of the internet to address different issues, such as creating economic opportunities. My favorite example was young people who created a WhatsApp group where they would post videos, and you had to subscribe per month, and this was the case in Tanzania. And for young women who were in context of that their parents didn't trust them, they were using the internet to find inspirational figures and to motivate their families to allow them to use the internet. So I think also when we think about SDGs and the effect that it'll have on young people, there are issues beyond ICTs. So for example, gender issues, whereas young women are not trusted to actually make use of the internet. In this case, what I mean is that if your main point of internet access is an internet cafe and you have to walk a distance, there's not that level of trust of where exactly are you going. And then you've got, in general, for both young men and women, their parents don't actually trust them to be online. And this is more a case of that divide when it comes to understanding, the age divide when it comes to understanding what the internet is for and how it can be used. And then you've got the issue of affordability, and you've got the issue of quality of service. So in these, before we can effectively talk about the internet having an impact on youth and SDGs, we actually still have a lot of issues that we need to deal with in the background. So yeah, that's my intervention.
Thank you, Shania, very much. So we've finished our first little session. It was just a brief presentation about youth-led initiative from the different regions, from Latin America, Europe, and Africa. We want to encourage you to have your initiatives as well. We want you to see how young people did it, because you can do it too. And now we will moving forward for our panel discussion, which will also be with our great panelists, and it will be moderated with our panel chair, Catherine Townsend. Is she here? Where is she? She was in the back. Is Catherine here? She's not here. Catherine. Oh. Okay, maybe Catherine couldn't make it, but it's not a problem. So we're gonna start our main discussion with our panelists. Who would like to start? Anyone like to start?
Yeah.
Oh,
I have
yeah. Sure, yeah. Okay, sure.
Hello. I have an intervention. Mostly I want to reflect on what's already been said and probably bring new perspective, because I'm also working on a project to connect unconnected communities around the world, and we do have a focus on youth as well. But I actually wanted to start by asking how much of the heterogeneity that exists within youth is really reflected in policies that target youth. Because I think that so far, all of the panelists have talked about different issues that youth face. Michael talks about the work that needs to be done in terms of sustainability and climate change. I've heard from Chennai the work that needs to be done in terms of entrepreneurship and how they're really driving connectivity up from the ground. So I really want to see given that there is such a wide perspective in terms of what youth look like, how exactly can policy be targeting youth like related initiatives in a way that leads to development in a sustainable manner? So I'm happy to open the floor up for all three panelists and hear your feedback.
Thank you, Sharada. We have also Tommy with us. It's Tommy Arian, right? Yeah. And he's the executive director of Mobile Forms Africa. So he has something to say, and he wants to encourage young people as well to have their own initiatives. Tommy, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Looks like I was almost missed out. It also means I have to run through this. I've already given this in a previous session, so I guess we'll talk about it later. I run a company called Mobile Forms, and what we do is we work with youths across 774 local governments in Nigeria to crowdsource data for SDG-related data and for businesses, NGOs, and governments. The way that we thought about this was we've been spending a lot of money in trying to hit our SDG targets in Africa for a long time. But for many of us, both the international community and even people on ground, the African market still looks like a black box. It is almost impossible to get reliable information to track the successes or the failures of the projects that we're running. So what we decided to do was, we knew the problem. The problem was that the infrastructure didn't exist. So we thought about it that what if we could create the infrastructure, but this time around, not a massive equipment that everybody's used to, but what if the infrastructure could be a network of interconnected mobile devices, youths, entrepreneurs in their local communities, providing consistent feedback in their spare time to people, to the businesses, non-profits, and international development agencies that need the data to further come to their community and improve service delivery. Oh, I didn't know that was showing. You can move to the next slide. I think I'm on slide 4 already. I moved on. Okay, yeah, good. So next slide, please. So that's why we came up with crowdsourcing. Let's get the team together. Let's all connect. Let everyone contribute to getting the SDG. So today, next slide, we started out the model in Nigeria. We're expanding into Ghana. And today we work with we have access to over 100,000 field agents, youth across communities that have indicated interest in collaborating on these projects. In return, we give them small rewards, and they are happy to do this for two things. First is the fact that they understand that they are playing a role in a bigger goal, and that the data they are collecting is going to be in turn used to improve service delivery in their community. And then the next thing is the fact that they get extra rewards, which they can use to supplement their income. And it's pretty simple. We work with organizations, we define your data requirements, and we push it out to our network. And in 1 to 3 days, you start getting reliable data from wherever you are. All GPS verified, timestamps, and photos to verify the records. The result of this is reliable data, data that can be verified at any point in time. 2-3 years later, you can still drill down to where.
is
and we build case studies of innovative initiatives all around the world. We have reached out to around 750 to 800 of them from 153 countries in the last, and we have built about 120 interview-based case studies to understand what last-mile connectivity initiatives exist and what their at multiple fora that have convening power. So we engage with the World Economics Forum's Internet for All through our work on the data working group, and we feed in our results into their work process so that it can be disseminated to decision makers. We collaborate with the IEEE's Internet Inclusion Initiative, where there is again a data working group that we feed in our work into, and like also collaborate with partners to understand needs. We also team up and partner with multiple other organizations to be able to get our data out to multiple high decision-making power. So we engage directly with multinational development banks and governments where possible, often at forums like this, in fact, and we start the conversation here and take it forward at a much higher level and keep consistently following up with updates to our data gathering as well as our results, making sure that they're able to have the information that they need in order to be able to make the decisions that might be useful in terms of investment into infrastructure or investment into programs that can yield better connectivity, which then also ties into better progress on sustainable development goals. You have.
Thank you very much, Shania. Mark, you want to intervene? Please do.
If you allow me, I want to start converging a bit your question, the previous question, so that we can get a train of thought started. In summary, it's youth as a stakeholder group and also participation in decision-making processes. So I'm often careful about certain assumptions about what the youth looks like. For instance, when I started my course, the core assumption was that it would be mostly men. That was completely wrong and proven time and time again that it's completely and totally wrong. We have a majority of women always. It's consistent, it is across countries, and that shows in itself that many assumptions can be wrong. There is this vast majority of people from different backgrounds that want to engage with this team, and are we reaching them in interesting and meaningful ways? That is the question that needs to be addressed, and sometimes it seems to me that the answer is no, and fitting into Khulud's question, why? Because an institution such as where the decisions are made, okay, political processes, ICANN, and other institutions, they seem to start from the premise that people who are there because they have a goal, okay? And youth often don't have a goal, correct? We are searching for a goal. We are searching for somewhere to invest our time and energy in. And this is the thing about assumptions. It always leads to a bit of fake or hollow conclusions. The way for us to start engaging, I feel, is to simply do it, and there is a barrier there. For example, if you start contributing to a mailing list, and this I've heard of many people, it's very likely that you make a comment that will be very important, very interesting, and nobody will care. But if some more experienced member of the group says the same thing right after, people will go like, oh, this is such a great contribution. How come nobody thought of this? right? It's this sort of problem that happens, and we hear about it time and time again. But there is a curve. There is a point in which you manage to get over that. But is it easy? No, it's hard. It's tiresome. It takes energy. But it's just kind of something we have to overcome. People have different limitations, right? We have to think about the inclusion of so many people along this travels, this experience of being able to go around in different conferences. We've met people with all kinds of disabilities, and they try their best to push and make improvements. And the only disability of youth, I often say, is lack of money, right? So we have to find ways to leverage that. And
quite practical, Mike, I would say. Yeah, thank you for these feedbacks. Yeah, about the recognition, it's something really hard to achieve, but I think we have people here, young people, to motivate us and to tell us that actually you can get that recognition. Yes, you'll work hard. Yes, you'll get tired, but you'll get there. No, so never give up, because recognition, it comes with time. You'll get it. It's not easy, but you can get it, just like we have all these amazing people trying to do things as much as they can. And now on, we have another question actually, which is how and in what ways can we try to balance between digital creativity in a way and kind of create different kinds of opportunities, like trying to make a difference from this traditional working style and employment. It comes with the question of employment for youth again at the table. Yeah, Shania, sure.
Thanks very much. So I just want to quickly say that with regards to the policy process, that the questions that was raised, I think there have been initiatives around youth and connectivity, but what needs to be done is definitely more evaluation to actually see who are they targeting and how is it working. And so then with regards to the question that you've asked around digital creativity and creating new economic opportunities, what we have found in our research is that in specific contexts where you've got people who are naturally entrepreneurial, they're actually taking up the resources that they have. I think the last speaker is one clear indicative of what the work that he's doing in Nigeria. But clearly, when you actually speak to young people on the ground, you actually find out in certain contexts, they are doing something. The biggest challenge is around actually having the funding that needs to be done. If you think about our systems when it comes to getting the funding for particular projects, it's once again the thing about having experience. It's once again that thing about being able to actually write a business proposal. It's that thing again, like, do people actually have faith in young people to be able to present a project and actually say, we're going to believe in you and invest in it? So one of the policy recommendations is looking at the ways in which we can support young people in their entrepreneurial activities and try to remove some of the barriers that limit them from accessing these resources. Because when you think about it, if you look at some of the educational curriculum, not everyone has access to actually learning about writing a business proposal. You have to go through a certain class, but sometimes you actually just have the knack to do it. But now the question is, who do you connect with and how do you get there? So once again, it's one of those issues around context. As a young person, it's a matter of saying, okay, so what resources do I have? Who do I know? And once again, what our research found, in particular for the young adult group, was that they either would ask their parents for some form of loans, or they would work on, if they owned a piece of land, you'd work for some money and then you'd find your capital. So I think that's also the thing, like, what are the resources available for young people to take forward this digital creativity?
Thank you, Shania. And now we are moving to discussions with the audience, whether in person or remotely. So do you have questions here? No questions? We have questions from the audience? No. No. Okay, now we should move on to our next question, actually, which is also, how do you think that ICT can be used in a way to enhance participation of young people toward achieving SDGs? Tommy?
On participation and how it can.
Sorry, I missed this. Can
Yeah, sure. How can ICTs be used to enhance the participation of young people toward actually implementing and achieving SDGs?
We're already doing something in that area, and I think we need to create communities. We need to get them to get engaged. Crowdsourcing, I would advise us to look into crowdsourcing a lot. The fact that we could get a lot of youths to do things and share their experiences encourages a lot of innovation. And creating the environment also is very key. And obviously, we'll be talking about funds. Funds is also very important. We tend to always want to shy away from funds and think people can get a lot of things done without funds. We couldn't have gone this far if we didn't get grants or have investors who were willing to say, go try out this idea. I mean, these are people who didn't know us, but the fact that these are people who didn't know us. Can you hear me? Okay. These are people who didn't know us, but the fact that they believed in what we were trying to do and they were willing to give us a chance. If a lot of youth out there, especially in Africa, I mean, there are lots of amazing ideas, lots of people who've got things to do. If we could believe more in them and give them the funds they need, I think that will go a long way. So two things: crowdsourcing opportunities, getting the youth to engage together, putting them in communities to do amazing things together. And second thing is providing them more access to funds.
Thank you, Tommy.
Advice? I'm sorry, I don't get it. Is that advice?
How the starter one should start.
Oh, how
like
to
a
start a
guide for
startup.
them, like, you know.
Ah,
Yeah, you know, like-
jeez, that's a lot.
yeah. Yeah, basically the basic tools. Yeah.
We'll need a different session for that.
No, we still have time.
I would say if you've got a great idea, you need to start, and you need to start as little as you can. If you don't have the skills to build the technology, start with a WhatsApp group or something. Just start. Do it manually until you can build the system to get it done, and then gradually. What we started with is radically different from what we're doing today. So we've had to change the model over and over again. We knew we wanted to solve the problem of data gathering in Nigeria, but what we started with was totally wrong. But then we changed it over time. Yeah, that's it.
Have another starter pack, a recipe, starter guide, whatever you want to call it. Do you have another one from a different perspective? Please do, Shana.
Okay, so
And sorry, we're like open for any question. Whenever you have a question, just like raise your hand. We just ask. Yeah, please do.
okay, so I'm going to think about myself.
Okay.
That they can afford. But I mean, it's literally creating an environment that encourages young people that your dream is not silly. So, for example, myself, Gabriel's gone, and Yolanda and Tato, we started an initiative called Emerging Leaders in Internet Governance, and all it took was literally just a passion about something and realizing that there isn't someone who's doing this. So how do we then take the initiative forward? So it's about creating an environment that allows young people to take their dream further. And actually, I think also the other thing about creating a startup pack is if young people supported each other. So I think that's another thing where when you've got an idea, there are some people who will actually take you down, but then there are some people who've done this before, and you might not need financial support, but you might actually just need motivational support. So my starter pack is about creating an environment that allows young people to thrive.
Okay. Yes, please.
Oh, since we have a question, we might.
Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah. Just like I'll come.
So my name is Rohan Dasani. I'm a secondary school student from Hong Kong, and
Wow.
I am like only 15 years old. But I guess that we can
Wow.
all.
I feel old. My God. Well done. Oh.
So I guess we can all agree that the Sustainable Development Goals are something that occupy all of our concerns. It's the highest level of concern that we have in this current days. And I believe that for youth, there's a rise to for the need to develop the awareness of these goals. And so as a young person, I believe that the decisions that we make in ratifying these goals are something that will affect our futures, and also for my friends and family, etc. But the question that comes to my mind is that what role can be taken by youth to assure the achievement of these sustainable development goals? And as youth, how can we shape our future through these goals? And so in my opinion, I believe that this can be split up into 4 main parts. The first one is so that youth do not underestimate themselves. And the second one is that the youth will have a positive vibe so that they will know that they have an effect, etc. And the third one, which I believe is the most important one, is that they have the ability to take forward their ideas and projects, etc. And the fourth one is that to have confidence for them to speak up, etc. But the problem that I find is it's very hard to get across all of these goals, and I just want to hear your perspectives of how we can get these through.
Thank you very much.
I would add to that, to your
And just touching on the point that the former guy from the, 15-year-old from the floor said, is that sometimes we don't take ourselves seriously. And one of my biggest concerns, and as a person who's part of a team who's trying to really shape policy domestically and obviously globally, if we don't show up, what does that mean for our digital futures? And I guess this really goes to my bigger point is, I have no doubt that young people are at the forefront of digital revolution. We are creating apps, we are literally transforming our lives. However, how do we effectively participate in shaping policy? So as much as we are creators, but do we really have a say in the way in which policy goes if you don't show up? So the bigger question really is how to effectively engage. Now, sorry to go on and on, but because we have this new youth organization in South Africa, we've been trying to engage with multiple stakeholders, and we've been receiving a lot of pushback and hostility because we are a youth group. So many stakeholders, when you just say youth, they like already, they chuck you out. So what are the ways as young people to effectively engage in policy forums and to be taken seriously, not only at the IGF, but also domestically, because domestically is where the real policy really happens. So does anyone have a case study to share of maybe how they were able to participate in a policy forum in their local context? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to draw upon my personal experience before I started working on this project. I was working for my master's thesis on a contemporary issue quite well known in the internet governance community. I worked on zero rating. And at the time that I wrote my thesis was when the consultation process by the regulator was ongoing. In order to finalize the regulation on data services and whether or not there should be discriminatory pricing. The ways in which I think youth as a collective and as individuals can organize and participate in such processes is by actively looking for fora, not just talking fora, but also written discussion fora that exists. So most national regulators have, like national regulators as well as ministries have discussion drafts that they put out for feedback before they finalize it. And it was timely that my research was able to feed in to some of the work that was ongoing in the policy space on zero rating at the time. This is early 2016. This is one way that you can individually contribute because they do take individual contributions. And it was useful to engage with policymakers at that forum. But I think collectively it's also possible to do. So we had at my school at the time, we had a youth-led conference, like a student-organized conference on the issues of net neutrality and zero rating at around that time, which focused on the critical issues that were being discussed in the legislation, that helped bring thought leaders both into our community and also helped us be heard a lot more. And I think, like, just in terms of like engaging, it's not just about being in the youth-only sessions, but also going out there into sessions where there are policy discussions that are happening, the high-level thematic sessions and the open sessions, where you can put together and put out your voice out there directly to decision makers and ask to be heard. Like, at times I understand that it's easy for people to like discard you as youth, but I think as long as you have a very strong point, and in my case, like I found it more useful that decision makers did here, when you back it up with data and back it up with evidence and go in a manner that they believe is something that's useful for them to use and pitch it in a way that's constructive to them. I think that those are skills that like often we need to develop and hone, and I'm honing like as I continue with my trajectory into what I do now. And I think that's something that like can be used very effectively to get attention to critical issues and your voices more broadly.
Thank you, Sharada. Actually, regarding to Yolanda's question, and I have also something to add. I think that now we have like shifting paradigms. We used to have the government as decision maker and then people. But now it's like companies are intervening, and now companies that actually control tech are the one who control behind decision making. Let me just give you one simple example, not really related to youth, but you'll see my point. Now, for example, I think most of us remember the Apple versus FBI cases. I mean, when we see, it was really something important because it was about national security, yet Apple was able to mobilize people and to actually believe that for them it was about privacy, whereas it was just about the brand's image as well behind. So I think that also we can take the example of Facebook. Facebook and companies like that are really influencing the decision making. So what we want to tell you today is like, go create your own initiatives, try to master ICT, try to master social media, make of it something useful, make your own network with people on site and remotely, but try to do something. Even like small project can help. There's a lot of examples of small projects that started, but they have that once you have recognition from people, you have power. That is something you need to be aware of. It all comes to recognition. Like brands, like companies, like Facebook, etc. What do they really have? How do they achieve that? By the recognition of people. Once they have people opinion, once people trust them enough so that they can pressure the government. So what you need as well do is have your own initiatives. And that way, or maybe your tech company, why not? A lot of people did. We have our friend Tommy here, which is from the business sector, and he can tell you that he's the executive director of mobile phones in Africa. So yeah, try to master as much as you can ACT. Make your own company. If not, try to make an organization, whatever. Just try to do something. That's what we're telling you, because things are shifting. Governments are no longer the decision making. They are really under the pressure of tech companies, and it is something that we all see and we can like witness really. So what we want you to do is have your own initiatives mostly and influence in a way as business or as civil society, but just try to make it happen.
It's a comment. Although I'm not a youth. I was once. Basically, the young man there has challenged us. The theme for this year's IGF is Shape Your Digital Future. Whose digital future when the youths are missing? My digital future? Your digital future? Or whose? Because I don't trust somebody who's like 67 years old and says, shape your digital. Whose future are they shaping? So basically, the young man is very fortunate. 20 years from now, he'll be 35. He would have remembered that he shaped his own digital future. So basically, what I'm trying to say is youths should be involved in so many innovative activities that will impact them positively, and that will bring some form of social change in the society that they live in. Because I'm one fortunate person, because I grew up before the internet, completed my secondary school before a mobile phone. Whatever I did was like book to book. Now I'm looking at a generation, I'm looking at my kids. My daughter, who is just about 8 years, she learns, 10 years now, she does French in school. So when she brings like homework for French, I don't speak French, but I would use Google. So if the young ones, the youths of today are not able to shape their digital future and probably make life better for them, no one will. With everything at hand, I think instead of saying 30 years, we should be saying 30 seconds. Don't wait for 30 years to achieve something that you can achieve within 30 seconds. Thank you.
Might I engage in some self-criticism? Yeah. Youth panels often have this quality of that the youth are awesome. Yes, we are, but, however, there is some big howevers. Youth are not very efficient. This has come time and time again. I've led next generation groups. I have tried to lead business initiatives. Meanwhile, you have on one hand a lot of energy, which is very good, a lot of willpower of energy, but often that energy just burns and burns and burns without having focus. So one thing that needs to be always in the minds of somebody who's trying to engage, is focus. So just to give a small example, back in the 10th IGF, 2 editions ago, at the open mic, the youth were very excited. They were like, the program was huge. It was like 100 people. And suddenly you had 4 rows of mics filled with youth from one end to the other. Everybody wanted to give their opinion, but the thing was, everybody was trying to say pretty much the same set of things, and it got so diluted and it got so lost in translation that nobody cared in the end. Nobody that was supposed to be impacted, right? And what I try to do when I'm leading one of those groups is say, okay, get an envoy, get like this one person that is the best speaker, and you channel all of the ideas, and you just send him with this package of ideas, and then you pick another person with another package of ideas. So it's channeling, it's being efficient, it's hitting hard, instead of hitting very small, very diluted, very, you know, that is something that needs to be worked on. And hopefully those who are post-youth, I will be post-youth next year, are trying to do something in that direction. I hope we are, and I hope that whenever all of us graduate into that level, we will be able to go like, okay, here are the mistakes we made, here's how we can do it better, be more impactful. So this is something to keep in mind, I very much believe.
We have another question, remotely. Do you think that the current curriculums are really enough to create the next generation of entrepreneurs? The educational curriculums, and should we? Yeah, please do.
So our research project, One World's Connected, actually tries to profile projects that are doing digital literacy training programs, among other things. And what we realized is that there is a lot of like traditional digital literacy that seems to be focused entirely on teaching tools and not necessarily focused on outcomes. And we feel that at the time that you do tie it to outcome-based training, for instance, entrepreneurship training or like agricultural training for farmers, like one of our projects in Nigeria does, or like how you, like not just how to code, but how to build things on the web, if you're doing a coding camp kind of training, is incredibly helpful. So currently, I feel like there is a diversity in the digital literacy training programs that currently exist. Definitely at the national level, the curricula themselves are not very cognizant because they're still very focused on like how do you use Word or how do you use Excel, which is only one step in that direction. And often to retain, especially first generation learners in key digital literacy programs, it seems relevant to have to take into account that they would be using it for something. So a project in Tunisia that I'm aware of called Tawasol teaches like school students in Tunisia how to not just how to like use the web, but also how to use build their own blog and then put like materials on that blog. And that's an outcome that you're creating, as opposed to just like a process of this is how you do HTML, which like isn't really helpful and doesn't really engage for a very long sustained period of time. So that, like, I would say that you need to have more emphasis in terms of the livelihood training and the outcome-based training, like what you tie these tools to, as opposed to just tool-based training. The current status quo definitely needs more, I would say.
Thank you, Sharada. Now, I'd like to direct also the question to the people we have here. Do you think that the current curriculums, the educational curriculums, are enough? What do you think is missing in your curriculum, for example? Because these kind of things we want to transmit as part of also the UN major group for youth and children to the UN, so you can make your voice heard. So what do you think is missing? What do you think you need to learn, but you're not getting it? If you have, like, please help us here. Yeah, sure, Yolanda.
Hi, I'm just so sorry to just jump in. Like, I had this very point 2 weeks ago at the Africa IGF. We were talking about digital transformation, and I mean, it was amazing, but one thing was missing: just basic education. What are kids learning? How are we equipping the young child from the global south to participate effectively in the digital economy. And I think, you know, throughout the IGF space, and I congratulate those who are educators and are part of these conversations. However, there is a large missing group of departments of education being part of these conversations because clearly something is missing. For example, my little sister is like 7, and what she's learning is what I learned when I was 7. So clearly there's a gap there, and I just had to raise that because we were having this very same conversation in the Africa IGF. Thank you.
Edmund Chung here. So in response to your question, our organization has been doing a bunch of youth engagement and youth development work for the last 10 years. And recently in this year, we've just started to review some of the curriculum in Hong Kong. So our colleague here in Hong Kong might add to that. It's largely unfortunate that it's very outdated. The reality is that by the time it becomes a textbook, it's totally outdated, and especially when we talk about internet literacy, really, it's unbelievably outdated. But one of the things that what we have started to do this year, which might be interesting, is engaging young people in the development of those curriculum. Because the reality is that whatever expert you find to draw up a curriculum, they never lived through Facebook while they were in primary school. Sorry, that's not going to happen. The only guys that have are the young people. And in order to tell them, you know, how to, you know, what's appropriate to do on Facebook, hey, you never had Facebook while you were in primary school. Sorry, you're not really the expert. So what we've learned quickly is to have to engage these people and have them as part of the process in actually developing those curriculum. And I think that's one thing that we learned very quickly. And I think other education bureaus and stuff should really think about this, especially when we talk about internet literacy. And that's not only the case that is for this generation. I think it will grow, you know, it will develop. The internet will change every year, and we will always need to go back to the young people who are, you know, online actually more time than older people like myself, and get the expertise from the real expertise.
Okay. Okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sabrina. I wanted to say something at each question you asked, but each time I wanted to say something, in my head, I had like, okay, you want just to find a general ID for all kids in all world. And each time, for each questions, I'm trying to find a general ID, and then I just realized that we can't have a general IDs because for each countries and each area, there is different way to make youth engaged, to learn youth things and so on. And I was like, for example, at the questions with when you asked for educational way to engage youth and to learn them and etc. I was like, okay, but if we act directly to the educational corps, maybe we can learn them and they will learn the kids. Because how we can make kids engage if, for example, parents are not really motivated. Like for parents, education is most important than organization next or association. I want, for example, take myself. When I was a kid, my parents, for them, it was first of all you go to school, you study, and then you go what you want to do next. Like it. So the fact to introduce internet knowledge by school was a good idea, and if school is not really not motivated, but if internet is not really important in the program of a school, so we are toward another problem. Like, okay, but if it's not important, how the solution we had before is useless. And then I just realized that, okay, but it's just me in France. It's not in another country. So in other countries, schools are very efficient for internet learning. I understand myself, but I don't know if everyone is understanding me. So yes, maybe we could just talk about context in the country and ideas of solution in each country, and maybe find a synergical way to help. Like here, for example, in France, we have this way to do things. We have this good idea. This is not really working, and oh, but us in this country we have that. How can we work together to maybe it's utopic, but to finally found a way to make together, to work together to find a general solution, but by specific solutions first. You understand me? Yes, that was the idea.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, actually, that what we were kind of trying to do, because we had like different young people from different regions, each one telling us about an initiative that he did and how it worked, what went wrong, what went right. So in all of these people are people who are young, and yeah, they tried to do their own initiatives, and we were trying to see, to map up from like global perspective, because each one is coming from a different region, and to see what works and what's not. So I think we were trying, at least. So,
Okay,
yeah,
just
sure.
to add, just to share.
Yeah, sure.
So in my country, we've got a program called Tech Startup Kids. So what we do like camps. My name is Tembiso from Internet Society Gauteng chapter, by the way. So what we do, the Tech Startup program is more of doing camps when schools are closed, where we allow kids to come up with solutions for their own schools, to say, what would you love to see in terms of maybe changing your curriculum under the ICT sector as you given trainings or whatsoever. And also what we do, we invite like your IBM, we invite different private sectors to come and see the potential within the young people, exactly what they want to do, so that they can help us in terms of the equipment that we need. Because most of the time you'd find that you'd hear that people say young people are not, active. A lot of young people, they are active. It's just that we don't have much resource to go out there and build exactly what we want to do. So I believe that given an opportunity to these young people would grow different in terms of the ICT sector.
Thank you very much. It's quite a great idea to have actually camps for kids, for them to see what's really not working in their schools and to actually improve it. It's quite good enough. I think each one of us can start such an initiative in his or her own country as well. So it's great. Yeah, sure.
Hi. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Sam from NetMission.Asia, which is basically an ambassador program in Hong Kong. So what we have found in past 10 years is there are lots of many dedicated young people in Hong Kong or around Asia. But the thing is that the curriculum in their secondary school students may not be so updated because they are still learning about the PowerPoint, Excel, or something like that. So what we want to try to do is the capacity building. For example, like the gentleman said, youth camp for the student to have a taste about internet governance. So I really want to urge everyone here to join us. If you have any ideas to make the curriculum more complete, particularly for secondary school students, because they need to have some updated learning materials, so they can have a sense about what is internet governance or some digital economy, something like that. So they can enter the university, so they can join the different kind of initiative. And also, I would like to share that every year, and there are 24,000 youngsters from college entering to university. But I see that there are not many young people. They get into the initiative like our ambassador program. So I would like to see. I would happy to see if young people, they can have a taste of internet governance in their secondary school time. They can more have a better sense to participate in this area. Thank you.
Very much. Yes, indeed. And that's why we would like to urge most of our people here to actually, why not create their own like courses and internet governance courses. We have like 5 minutes or 3 minutes, but yeah, sure, and we'll wrap up.
I just want to share something also. With those young people that we do camps with, some of them, they are clever. It's just that you find them saying, can you change the content in our own language so that we can understand it better? And when we started translating some of the articles or some of the things that we were doing, we started to see when you engage like young people in their own language where they are comfortable and it's easy for them to express themselves in terms of what they want. So, yeah.
Unfortunately, we have like 2 minutes left, so I think we need to wrap it up early. Does anyone have last minute or something to say? Bye-bye message, maybe.
We'll probably go left to right, and I'll have Tommy start, maybe.
That's interesting. The implant plan route. So from our side, we're looking forward to more collaborations, more engagements, and more importantly, I'll be able to discuss more methods around using crowdsourcing to solve more problems across Africa. I'm passionate about it. I think it's going to be a model that we need to adopt across different industries. We're all aware of the big startups like the Ubers who've gone, and essentially what they've done is crowdsource. No one owns anything, everybody owns it. So by applying the same concept across different industries, we would be able to help youths contribute more efficiently, collaborate more. And I think it will be more interesting when you start to collaborate across countries using their mobile devices and engage a bit more better. I think it's going to be awesome when we get to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Like, we should like urge you all for collaboration. People who are here and who took something from here and want to spread it out in their own communities as well. So,
I will be very brief. I think that my biggest takeaway from the session and the discussion that ensued is that there is a lot to be done in terms of youth inclusion, both in terms of policy making spaces, but also in terms of how youth get included in coming online in the very first place, and how we can make that a process that's easier for us to get to have a more like robust and very shaped digital future. So I think that that's something that we all need to put our efforts to together as well as individually.
It is time that we start putting these initiatives together in a book or a compilation, and we stop talking about them in forums and we start making them material. And I trust in Khulud to start organizing that collection with the vast material she has amassed. Really, seriously, we need to start having this as a resource and not just as an ad hoc thing.
For me, I think my last words are that we need to understand where the youth are, what their needs are, and how best we can work together to actually address them. So those are my last words.
So unfortunately, our session comes to an end. We'd like very much to thank you for coming here. We know it's late, we know it's last session in the day, and you're probably tired, but thank you for dedicating time to be with us. And what we want you today to take from our session is examples of initiatives, how to go further. We have different initiatives from different regions, and we want you to think about them, think about what went wrong, what didn't, and to try also to implement in your own countries and communities initiatives as well. That's what we want you to think about. And also try to collaborate between the people that actually are here today and took a lot of important stuff. We collaborate, try to outreach people, don't be shy. That is something very important, because when we are youth, we get to be a little bit intimidated by expert, by the word expert. But we want to tell you that you can be also an expert. You just have to work hard, don't be shy, make your own initiative, because that's how you do it in a digital future. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Hello.